Hi, Jason here. A lot of people have been having trouble with the Flexfuel display on the Vemstune and how to set that up. So I figured I'd go through a different tutorial. I found a better way to do it, and more people have been having success with it. And a couple people, well, a couple people local to me had problems with the first way to do it, so I figured out the better way to do it. So we go over here and we look at Vemstune. Well, first we'll open Notepad++, and we'll open a file, and it's going to be C, program files x86, and then the Vemstune installation. You should be using the 2018-0104. That's the latest. You go into config, include, and then we'll do the calc model common 1.2.38. That's the firmware that most people are using right now. It's quite stable. It's really good. There's been a ton of features introduced between 1.2.31 and 1.2.38. This will be the recommended one for the current firmware. So that's where I suggest adding it. So here we have it open, and we go down to right around line 193. So you already have it in here. But put Flexfuel equals curly brace, speed 2 minus 50, and curly brace. So the Flexfuel sensor does 50 hertz to 150 hertz. So 50 hertz is 0% ethanol, 150 hertz is 100% ethanol. So we really just divide or subtract 50, and then it scales linearly. So just save that, Control S, and then you're going to want to exit Vemstune, restart it, since I already have it open. You want to open a config file. The default 1.2.38. Or just hook it up to your ECU if you're using that firmware. It's probably even better. So here I have the default 1.2.38 firmware open, and by default the gear display is right here. I don't really need to see a gear display in a round gauge, so what I'm going to do is change that to Flexfuel, and then for a bonus I'll add a gauge right here, one of these digital gauges to show gear display. But first let's get the Flexfuel done. So go over here, View, Editors, Add New Symbol Descriptor, and the available symbols are here. But first you need to select under Show Symbols, select All. It takes a little bit. There's a lot of them in the database. Once that refreshes, drop down, hit the F key to jump down to F. Flexfuel. For the group, you want fuel and enrichments. For the gauge descriptor type, I usually use % here. And symbol title can be anything you want. I suggest ethanol or Flexfuel, whichever way you like to display that. It'll just be the label here in the bottom of the gauge. It's been created. We'll close that. Okay, I just had to restart Vemstune. It didn't show up until I restarted it. So if that's the case, I'll show you what to do. Just restart Vemstune. I usually choose the default config 1.2.38, unless you're connected to an ECU, that'll automatically just connect and load the firmware. These same steps are the same no matter what ECU firmware you're using. So if you're using 1.2.11, one of the older ones, just edit the 1.2.11 file in the config include directory. So okay, it's loaded it. It's loaded the config file. You can see it down here. And then So hit Shift 1 to get to the main screen, and then right click on the gear, change the gauge data, fuel and enrichments. I named it ethanol. If you named it flex fuel, it would be under F, flex fuel. So whatever you named it, it'll be there. And there we go, 0 to 100%. And if you want to change the yellow or the red, just go to modify the descriptor, and then the colored areas. So we want to say 0 to 10 is bad, so that's danger. 10 to 30 is normal. 30 to 60, warning. 60 to 100, is danger. Just for the case where you might have a small fuel pump or something like that, but you can change it to whatever values you like. Okay, then the bonus part, to add the gauge back here for the gear selector in the digital gauge. Click here to go to edit mode, right click, add a new gauge, digital gauge, and you click on it, you use your arrow keys, shift arrows to move it, or you can just drag it too. The arrows are a little more precise. Change gauge data, it goes under basic, gear, and then click on edit mode. So now your gear is going to show up here as a single number. So I don't need the round gauge for the gear, it'll show up right here. It's big, you can change the size in the edit mode. So yeah, that's it. Your ethanol will show up, and as long as it's put into a wheel speed too. So if you're on wheel speed 1, it'll show up here under speed. Wheel speed 2, it'll show up here. So it depends on which input you put it on. If you really wanted to show it as ethanol and it's on wheel speed 1 input, then just use speed 1 minus 50 in the INI file. So that's the way that's how to set it up. Pretty easy, although it does require editing some files. I'll include the file as a download in the description of this video, and so you can just, if you're using 1.2.38 firmware, you can just grab it and put it in your directory, and that'll be easier for you. So there, if you have any questions, either comment below or send us an email at support@vems.com. Thanks.